The first words my wife spoke in divorce court were loud enough to reach every corner of the room. "Your Honor, he's nothing but a useless old Marine." After that, the courtroom became so quiet I could hear the air conditioning system humming above us. No one coughed. No papers moved. Even the attorneys seemed unsure what to do with the sentence once it was hanging in the air. Everyone looked at me as though I were an aging dog whose family had finally decided keeping him around was more trouble than he was worth. I studied Linda for a long moment. 32 years of marriage sat across from me in a pale blue blazer I had bought her for our anniversary 5 years earlier. She kept her eyes lowered after saying it. She would not look at me. Her attorney, Russell Green, seemed pleased. He was a polished man with slick hair, a tailored suit, and the permanent smile of someone who believed every conversation was a competition he had already won. For nearly 40 minutes, he had described me as an emotionally distant, unstable burden who had made Linda miserable for years. He spoke about my military service as though it were a character defect. He spoke about my silence as though it were proof of cruelty. He spoke about my age as though 68 meant I had become too worn out to deserve dignity. Up to that point, he had enjoyed himself. Then I looked toward the judge. He had been reaching for his coffee. I leaned forward slightly. "Morgan," I said quietly. "Do you remember me?" The cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Judge Harold Morgan narrowed his eyes. At first, he looked confused, as though he believed age was playing some cruel trick on his memory. Then all the color disappeared from his face. He rose so quickly that his chair rolled backward and struck the wall behind him. "Oh, my God," he whispered. His eyes remained fixed on me. "Frank Dalton?" Suddenly, Russell Green did not look nearly as confident. His eyes moved from the judge to me. He adjusted his tie as though it had become too tight. Linda finally raised her head. Confusion spread across her face. The bailiff cleared his throat. "Your Honor?" Morgan blinked several times. Then he sat down carefully, though he never stopped looking at me. "This court will take a 15-minute recess," he announced. He struck the gavel once and disappeared through the door behind the bench. Whispers immediately swept through the courtroom. Linda leaned toward me. "What was that?" "An old memory." Her attorney stepped closer. "Mr. Dalton, do you personally know Judge Morgan?" "Not very well." Technically, that was true. You do not really know a man simply because his life once depended on the strength of your arm in the middle of black floodwater. But you remember him. You remember him forever. That was the moment Linda realized she might not know the man she had been married to for 32 years. To explain how we reached that courtroom, however, I need to go back much further. I grew up outside Jacksonville, North Carolina, in a community where nearly every family had some connection to the Marine Corps. My father had served in Korea. My older brother went to Vietnam and never came home. By the time I finished high school, enlisting did not feel like a choice. It felt inevitable. Like the tide coming in. Like gravity pulling you toward the only future you had ever imagined. I served for 26 years. I eventually became a Marine gunnery sergeant. Most of what happened during those years stayed inside me. Men from my generation were taught to carry difficult things quietly. You handled your responsibilities. You protected the people beside you. You did not complain. And you certainly did not bring the ugliest parts home to the people you loved. Linda once admired that about me. We met in 1989 at a church fundraiser in Wilmington. The volunteers had overcooked the barbecued chicken so badly that it could have been used as roofing material. I made some foolish joke about it. Linda laughed. I remember thinking she had the warmest smile I had ever seen. Back then, she did not care that my pickup had rust around the wheel wells. She did not care that my dress blues were older than some of the young Marines under my command. She told me I made her feel safe. For a long time, we were happy. Not the polished kind of happiness people display in photographs. Real happiness. Mortgage payments. Friday night meatloaf. Arguments over where to spend Thanksgiving. Folding laundry while watching television. Laughing at jokes we had repeated so many times that no one else would have found them funny. We raised our son, Michael, in a small ranch house a few miles from the water. Linda built a career in real estate. I completed my service and eventually retired. From the outside, we looked steady. Maybe we even believed we were. But people rarely change all at once. Most changes arrive slowly. A complaint here. A silence there. A disappointment that never gets discussed. Then one morning, you wake up beside someone and realize you have spent years drifting in opposite directions. Retirement was harder on me than I admitted. The nightmares became more frequent. Crowded stores made my chest tighten. Some mornings, I would sit in my truck outside the hardware store, trying to convince myself to open the door and walk inside. I had survived deployments and disasters. Yet a crowded checkout line could make my hands sweat. I did not know how to explain that. So I did what I had always been trained to do. I kept moving. I kept quiet. Linda believed I was becoming cold. The truth was that I was exhausted in places sleep could not reach. She would ask what was wrong. I would tell her I was fine. She would ask why I no longer wanted to attend crowded events. I would say I preferred staying home. She interpreted my silence as rejection. I interpreted her frustration as something I should endure without making worse. Neither of us understood what the other was really saying. Silence does not always protect a marriage. Sometimes it rots one from the inside as surely as anger or cruelty. Over the years, Linda spent more time with the women from her real estate office. They belonged to country clubs. Their husbands owned dealerships, law practices, vacation homes, and expensive boats. They drove new vehicles and talked about luxury resorts as though weekends in the Caribbean were routine. Beside them, I think Linda began to feel embarrassed by me. I was an aging Marine who volunteered at the VFW and wore the same brown jacket every winter. I still drove an old Ford pickup. I preferred coffee at a diner to cocktails at a private club. After Michael moved to Raleigh, the house became too quiet. Without our son there, Linda and I had fewer reasons to pretend our distance was temporary. She began criticizing small things. The way I folded towels. The sound I made when I chewed. The fact that I refused to replace my truck with something she considered respectable. Eventually, she stopped talking to me unless she needed something. One morning, she asked for a divorce while drinking coffee. Her voice was as casual as though she were discussing the weather. "I wasted too many years settling," she said. I nodded because I did not know what else to do. A man can survive incoming fire more easily than certain conversations. In a crisis, training tells you where to stand and what to protect. When the woman you love says your life together was something she merely tolerated, there is no training for that. I did not fight her at first. I agreed to sell the boat. I told her she could keep most of the furniture. I offered half my pension without argument. Money had never mattered much to me. But once people lose respect for you, kindness begins to look like weakness. Her attorney asked for everything. The house. My savings. My retirement income. Even the small fishing property near Swansboro that had belonged to my father. I could have hired a more aggressive attorney. I could have fought from the beginning. The truth was, I was tired. What hurt was not the money. It was hearing 32 years reduced to 2 words. Worthless veteran. Oddly enough, those words did not wound me as much as they probably should have. Deep down, I knew Linda's anger was not really about me. She was angry that life had not become the glamorous story she once imagined. Many people reach our age carrying that disappointment. Some accept it. Some rebuild. Some blame the person standing closest to them. When the recess ended, the courtroom doors opened. Judge Morgan returned slowly. He was older than I remembered. His hair had turned gray. Reading glasses rested low on his nose. He walked with a slight limp. Time catches everyone eventually. But when he looked at me, I saw the same young prosecutor I had last seen more than 2 decades earlier. "Before these proceedings continue," he said, "I need to speak privately with Mr. Dalton in chambers." Russell Green stood immediately. "Your Honor, I must object." "You may object," Morgan replied. "I am still requesting the conversation." Green sat down. The bailiff guided me through a narrow hallway lined with faded photographs of former judges. The courthouse smelled of old paper, furniture polish, and coffee that had been sitting too long. Morgan's chambers were smaller than I expected. Law books filled the shelves. Family photographs covered one wall. A small ceramic lighthouse stood beside the window. The moment the door closed, Morgan stared at me. Then he shook his head. "I'll be damned." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. More than 20 years disappeared between us. "You got old, Frank." "So did you." He laughed softly. Then he stepped around the desk and hugged me. It was not formal or polite. It was the kind of embrace older men give only when words are inadequate. "You saved my life," he said. "That was a long time ago." "Not to me." Morgan returned to his chair. "I searched for you afterward." "You did?" "For years. Then you disappeared. I transferred west. After that came deployments. Then retirement. Life happened." "Yes. Life happened." That sentence sounds simple until you are old enough to understand everything it can contain. Morgan leaned back. "Do you remember the storm? Every time it rains hard." A major hurricane had torn through the Carolina coast more than 2 decades earlier. Roads vanished beneath floodwater. Power lines came down. Boats landed in parking lots. Families climbed into attics to escape the rising water. At the time, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune and assigned to emergency response support. Morgan was a young federal prosecutor visiting Jacksonville during an investigation involving military contractors. Once the storm arrived, none of that mattered. By midnight, emergency radio calls overlapped one another. Children trapped inside homes. Elderly residents stranded. Vehicles being pushed off roads. Morgan had become trapped with several civilians near Cedar Point when floodwater overtook their cars. The current was strong enough to pull trees from the ground. Our commanding officer ordered us to wait for daylight before attempting another rescue. I disobeyed. Whether that was courage or stupidity depends on who tells the story. I took 2 Marines in an inflatable rescue raft. The neighborhood had become a river. Rain moved sideways. Electrical lines flashed in the distance. We found Morgan holding onto a street sign. One arm gripped the metal pole. The other held an older woman above the water. He was exhausted. Terrified. Still refusing to release her. "Let go when I tell you," I shouted. "Not without her," he shouted back. Even in that moment, I respected him. We pulled the woman into the raft first. Then Morgan. A wave struck us as I hauled him aboard. The raft nearly rolled. I damaged my shoulder pulling his weight over the side. It never healed properly. Cold weather still makes it ache. Back in his chambers, Morgan opened a drawer. He removed a small object wrapped in cloth. When he unfolded it, my old Marine Corps challenge coin lay in his palm. I stared at it. I had not seen it since that night. "You gave me this in the ambulance," he said. "I did? You told me surviving meant I owed something back." I smiled faintly. That sounds like the kind of thing I would have said. It changed my life. Over the years, I had occasionally seen Morgan's name in newspapers. Assistant prosecutor. State judge. Eventually, Superior Court judge. He had a reputation for fairness. No scandals. No political theatrics. Just steady work. Morgan placed the coin carefully on the desk. "What happened to you, Frank?" The question carried more weight than he probably realized. I could have answered in 100 ways. War happened. Funerals happened. Retirement happened. Age happened. The slow loneliness of no longer knowing where you belonged happened. Instead, I said, "I got tired." Morgan nodded. Men our age usually understand that answer. After a moment, his expression became professional. "Did you ever threaten Linda?" "No." "Hide marital assets?" "No." "Physically or emotionally abuse her?" I looked directly at him. "Never." He nodded once. That is what I believed. Distant thunder moved over the coast. Storm season had returned. Morgan loosened his tie. "Her attorney intends to use your military history to suggest instability." That does not surprise me. Does it make you angry? I thought about Linda as the young woman who once danced barefoot with me in our kitchen. The woman who held my hand at my father's funeral. The woman who now viewed me as an embarrassment to be removed. No, I said. Mostly it makes me sad. Morgan exhaled. There is something she may not know. What? Several Marines contacted my office over the years looking for you. Why? To thank you. That was not necessary. It was to them. He opened a thick folder. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Some handwritten. Some typed. Some folded and yellowed with age. One came from a former Marine whose addiction treatment I had quietly helped pay for. Another came from a widow whose mortgage I covered for 6 months after her husband died. One was from a young corporal who wrote that I had stayed with him through the darkest night of his life and convinced him not to give up. I looked away after reading that one. You kept these? Morgan nodded. People do not forget men like you. For a moment, I could not answer. After enough years, you begin to believe everyone has forgotten. Morgan closed the folder. The courtroom thinks this case is about property. He leaned forward. I think it is about dignity. For the first time since the divorce began, I understood that he was right. When Morgan and I returned to the courtroom, everyone became silent again. Linda looked nervous. That was new. Until that morning, she had carried herself like someone certain of victory. Her expression changed when Morgan pulled out my chair before returning to the bench. Russell Green stood. Your Honor, I would like the record to reflect my concern regarding possible. Morgan raised one hand. This court remains fully impartial. Green sat down. The hearing continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Earlier, I had been treated like a tired old man standing in the way of his wife's freedom. Now people watched me as though I were a puzzle. It is strange how quickly respect appears once people believe you may be important. During a pause, Linda leaned close. What did you tell him? Nothing special. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Maybe he remembered something. The hearing lasted another hour. Morgan adjourned until the following afternoon. Outside, low clouds covered the parking lot. The air smelled of salt and wet asphalt. I was walking toward my truck when Linda called my name. Frank. I turned. She stood beside her Lexus, holding her purse against her chest. The years showed around her eyes. The freckles I remembered from our first meeting were still visible across her cheeks. Age allows you to see every version of someone at once. The young woman you married. The mother of your child. The stranger standing before you. What is it? Linda hesitated. Who are you? The question was not funny. After 32 years, it may have been the saddest question she could ask. I am the same man I have always been. No, she said. I do not think you are. Rain began tapping against the courthouse steps. What happened during that hurricane? People were rescued. That is all you are going to say? That is what happened. Linda's frustration became visible. Why will you never talk to me? There it was. The wound beneath the anger. Not the property. Not her friends. Not even the divorce. My silence. 30 years of it. I leaned against the truck. My damaged shoulder had begun aching in the damp weather. You want the truth? Yes. The truth is that I stopped knowing how to explain myself. Her expression softened. When Michael was young, I could pretend I was fine. Work kept me focused. Being a father gave me something clear to protect. I looked toward the gray sky. After retirement, everything became louder inside my head. Linda lowered her eyes. I thought you stopped loving me. That hurt more than anything said in the courtroom. Because I never had. Not once. I got tired, I said. That is all. Rain fell harder. Cars moved across the wet street. Linda shook her head. Do you know what the women at my office said about you? I can imagine. They said you were emotionally unavailable. Bitter. Trapped in the past. I gave a tired smile. They were not completely wrong. I defended you at first. I did not know that. But eventually, I began believing them. I looked at her. I spent most of my career terrified someone under my command would die because I overlooked something important. She met my eyes. And somehow, I still missed what was happening inside my own marriage. Linda turned away. For years, I imagined I might feel triumphant if she regretted leaving. Instead, I felt only tired. "Michael is angry with me," she said. "That does not surprise me." Our son had called the night Linda filed. He had not shouted. "Disappointment from your child often hurts more than anger. You know Dad would never betray you," he told her. "Why are you treating him like a criminal?" Linda said Michael did not understand marriage. He answered, "Maybe not, but I understand loyalty." A week later, Michael drove from Raleigh to help organize my financial records. That was when he discovered I had sold my motorcycle years earlier. "You loved that Harley," he said. "The mortgage needed paying." Mom never knew. There was no reason to worry her. There were many things Linda never knew. The security work I took during the recession when her commissions dropped. The meals I skipped during deployments so younger Marines could eat. The panic attacks I concealed in public restrooms. Men from my generation became experts at hiding pain. Unfortunately, we also learned to hide love. Beside the courthouse, Linda looked smaller. Not physically. The story she had told herself was beginning to crack. "Did you really save Morgan's life?" "That was a long time ago." "That is not an answer." "Yes," I said. "I helped save him." Linda covered her mouth. Shame settled into her eyes. Not simply because I had rescued someone. Because strangers knew important things about her husband that she had never tried to understand. "I found a box in the attic," she said. I knew immediately. "My old foot locker." "The medals," she continued. "The letters. You read them?" "Yes." A long silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, "I did not know." Standing in the Carolina rain beside the woman who once knew me better than anyone, I understood something painful. Sometimes people do not stop loving each other first. Sometimes they simply stop seeing each other clearly. The following morning, the courthouse parking lot was unusually crowded. Old Ford and Chevrolet pickups filled the spaces. Several worn motorcycles stood near the curb. Men in faded ball caps gathered beneath the drizzle, drinking coffee from foam cups. Some leaned on canes. Others stood stiffly because old injuries no longer allowed them to move easily. At first, I did not understand why they were there. Then someone called out, "Morning, Gunny." I stopped. Eddie Navarro walked toward me. I had not seen him in 12 years. His beard had turned gray. He took my hand in both of his. "Heard what happened yesterday," he said. "Figured you should not walk in alone." More veterans approached. Some I recognized immediately. Others required a moment. One had been a reckless 19-year-old Marine I once talked out of driving after he had been drinking. Another had lost fingers overseas. One had nearly lost his family during an addiction struggle. Each had a story. Each believed I had once mattered to him. I did not know what to do with that feeling. "You boys are making a scene," I muttered. Eddie smiled. "That is the point." They entered the courthouse with me. Not loudly. Not aggressively. They simply filled the gallery behind my chair. Shared silence can be more powerful than shouting. Linda entered and stopped when she saw them. Russell Green looked deeply uncomfortable. Judge Morgan glanced toward the gallery when he entered. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Then he called the court to order. The morning began with financial testimony. Retirement accounts. Property values. Pension estimates. The ugly mathematics people used to divide a life once loved no longer provides a solution. Eventually, Green questioned me again. "Mr. Dalton, would you agree that your emotional withdrawal contributed to the failure of your marriage?" "Yes." He appeared surprised. "And would you agree that your military experiences left you psychologically damaged?" Judge Morgan looked up sharply at the wording. I answered. "Yes." The room became quiet. Green stepped closer. "Then you admit you became incapable of participating in a healthy marriage?" "No. You just admitted you were damaged." "I carried damage." "What is the difference?" I looked at Linda. "The difference is that I continued loving my wife every day." Her eyes immediately filled. Green recovered quickly. Love without communication can still become neglect, can it not? He was not completely wrong. That was the difficult part. Yes, I said. Sometimes it can. Green turned toward the judge as though he had scored his point. Then Linda spoke. That is enough. Everyone looked at her. Even her attorney appeared confused. Mrs. Dalton. No. Her voice cracked. For the first time since the divorce began, she sounded tired instead of angry. You keep talking about my husband like he is some kind of monster. She looked toward Green. He is not. Perhaps we should. You want the truth? The courtroom became motionless. Frank was never cruel. He was never abusive. He was never lazy. She tightened her grip on a tissue. He stopped allowing people to see how much pain he was carrying. Morgan leaned back and allowed her to continue. And I stopped trying to understand him. Linda wiped beneath her eyes. I spent years comparing our life to other people's lives. Women with richer husbands. Bigger houses. New cars. Expensive vacations. Then she looked at me. Somewhere along the way, I forgot who I married. The words nearly broke me. Not because I had won. Because 32 years is a long thing to lose. Green attempted to regain control. Mrs. Dalton, perhaps we should return to the financial issues. No, she said. The financial issues may be why we are here. Then Linda revealed the things she had found. I had sold my motorcycle during the recession to help save our house. I had worked night security jobs when her real estate income declined. She found the old pay stubs. I closed my eyes. I had never wanted credit. I had only wanted to keep our family secure. Linda reached inside her purse. She removed a folded letter. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was mine. I had written the letter 6 years earlier during a particularly difficult winter. Nightmares had been waking both of us. I intended to give it to her. Then I lost the courage. Linda unfolded the page. You wrote this. I nodded. Her voice trembled as she read. I know living with me has not always been easy. Sometimes I feel as though parts of me never returned from overseas. None of that was ever your fault. I loved you before the war inside my head became loud, and I still love you now. By the time she finished, even Russell Green appeared uncomfortable. Linda lowered the letter. Why did you never give this to me? Because I did not believe the words mattered anymore. That may have been the saddest truth spoken during the entire hearing. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. The settlement was fair. No tricks. No dramatic transfer of property. Linda kept the Wilmington house. I did not want it. Too many ghosts lived in those rooms. I moved into a small rented cabin near Swansboro. 1 bedroom. A narrow kitchen. A porch swing facing the marsh. For the first time in years, silence did not feel hostile. I began sleeping better. Not perfectly. But better. Several mornings each week, I drove to a veterans center near Jacksonville. I helped with paperwork. Insurance forms. VA claims. Transportation to medical appointments. Older veterans can become lost inside those systems. Sometimes what they need most is not an expert. They need someone willing to sit beside them while they work through the confusion. One Tuesday afternoon, I looked up from a stack of intake forms and saw Linda standing in the doorway. She held a cardboard tray of coffees. The room became awkward. Several veterans recognized her from court. One man whispered something to another. Linda noticed. To her credit, she entered anyway. I brought coffee, she said. No one answered at first. Then Walt Jenkins, an 82-year-old retired Navy man with a rough voice and a soft heart, pointed toward an empty table. Well, do not stand there blocking the door. A few people laughed. The tension broke. Linda returned the following week. Then the week after that. She helped sort donated clothing. Answered telephones. Assisted elderly spouses with forms. One afternoon, I watched her sit beside a Vietnam widow for nearly an hour. Linda did not give advice. She listened while the woman cried. Afterward, Linda noticed me watching. What? Nothing. But it meant something. I did not expect us to become husband and wife again. That chapter was finished. Some relationships break too slowly and over too many years to be completely rebuilt. But respect can return. Sometimes friendship can return as well. Michael noticed the change. "I can finally talk to both of you without feeling like I am walking through a minefield," he joked one Sunday. We began sharing occasional family dinners again. Mostly because of our granddaughter, Emma. Emma was 10 and asked direct questions the way only children can. One afternoon, she helped me fish from the pier. "Grandpa, were you really a hero?" I nearly spilled my coffee. "No, ma'am. But Judge Morgan said you saved people." I baited her hook. "Doing your job does not make you a hero." She frowned. "Then what does?" I considered the question. "Probably being kind when no one is watching." Emma seemed satisfied. Children understand certain truths more easily than adults. A few weeks later, Emma's school held a Veterans Day assembly. The event took place inside an elementary school gymnasium. Folding chairs. Terrible acoustics. Paper flags taped to the walls. Coffee served in foam cups. My favorite kind of American gathering. Emma begged me to attend. Crowds still tired me, but granddaughters possess a look that makes refusal nearly impossible. Linda came as well. We sat together near the back. Children fidgeted while singing patriotic songs slightly off-key. Then the principal approached the microphone. "We have a special guest speaker today. Please welcome Judge Harold Morgan." I looked up in surprise. Morgan walked onto the stage wearing a dark suit and carrying several note cards. He spotted me immediately and smiled. That man always enjoyed ambushing me. Morgan spoke about service, sacrifice, and community. Nothing political. Nothing exaggerated. Just honest words. Near the end, he paused. "A few months ago," he said, "I watched an entire courtroom underestimate a man because he appeared to be an ordinary senior citizen. I knew where the speech was going. I wanted to slide beneath my chair." Linda nudged my arm. "Too late now," she whispered. Morgan continued. "Real strength rarely announces itself. In my experience, the strongest person in a room is often the quietest." Then he looked directly at me. "Frank Dalton, would you please stand?" Emma nearly bounced out of her seat. I rose slowly. The gym filled with applause. Not wild cheering. Something gentler. Teachers. Students. Parents. Veterans. People standing to recognize an old Marine who had spent years believing no one saw him anymore. I looked toward Linda. Tears filled her eyes. They were not tears of guilt. They looked like understanding. After the assembly, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Grandpa," she whispered, "everybody likes you." I laughed. "Never trust a crowd too much." She grinned. Later that evening, Linda visited my cabin. She carried a small wooden box. I found this while cleaning the attic. Inside was the folded American flag from my retirement ceremony. It had been carefully preserved. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Linda said the words we both needed. "I am sorry I stopped seeing you clearly." I nodded. "And I am sorry I stopped allowing you to." The sun dropped toward the marsh. Golden light moved across the porch. Emma was visiting that evening. Together, Linda and I unfolded the flag and showed her how to fold it properly into a triangle, the same way my father once taught me. 3 generations stood together beneath the fading sky. We were no longer the family we had once been. But we were no longer enemies. Perhaps that was enough. At 68, I finally learned that peace and loneliness can look almost identical from a distance. The difference is what lives inside the silence. For years, my silence contained fear, exhaustion, and words I did not know how to speak. Linda's silence contained disappointment and resentment she allowed other people to define for her. By the time we finally became honest, the marriage could not be saved. But dignity could. Respect could. A family could learn to stand in the same room without tearing one another apart. If this story reminds you of someone in your own life, a veteran, a spouse, a parent, or simply a quiet person carrying a burden no one else can see, tell that person they matter. Do not wait for a courtroom. Do not wait for a box in the attic. Do not wait until strangers understand someone you have stopped trying to know. Ask questions while there is still time to hear the answers. Because sometimes the people holding a family together for the longest are the very people the world notices last.